Alrighty, and good morning from California, and welcome to the Wisdom of the Soul. This is September 18th of 2022. Program number, I think, is 29, but I'm not sure. It's all starting to blend together. It's amazing how fast time has gone this year, and I never get used to that. I suppose you know exactly what I'm talking about. The older you get, the faster time goes. But I was just getting used to it being August, and somehow it's the middle of September. And I'm so happy that you're with us today because I see today's class as being really important, a very rich um, and meaningful concept, very complex also. So we may take a couple of weeks on this. We'll see how it goes. But I'm talking about a philosophical model called the middle way. And we'll do our opening meditation in a minute, and then we'll explore what is meant in philosophy, particularly Eastern philosophy, and though not exclusively, to a large degree, a Buddhist concept, the middle way, sometimes called the third way. And it opens up multiple possibilities after that. Once we crack out of dualism, that either or binary, all or nothing view of absolutes, that's what it is. Dualism gets its strength from the notion that everything must be absolute, that there are no relatives, that everything is objective, that nothing is subjective. And that dualism becomes a prison for us. The third way is a way out of that prison, but it opens up other options. And yet there's something about the number 3. That's where we'll begin today. What is it about the number 3? And so I'm excited to get into it. Let's do our opening focus, and we'll talk about the middle way, and somewhere around noon, maybe a little bit after, we'll go to Q&A, and any questions or comments that you have, I hope you'll just note in the chat box, so it helps you organize your thinking and make it more concise and to the point. And that's good and better than going through this hand-raising thing. We'll see how it works if we continue to do it this way. Just put a little note in the chat box. Just say either, hey, Melinda, I have a comment, or put the comment in. I'd like to ask Michael about this, or I want to make this comment about the middle way. Or an experience you had in meditation, a question you have about meditation. And how is your meditation? How's it going? All right, speaking of which, let's do it. Sit up straight. Close your eyes. Bring your awareness into being present in your body. Move your awareness from your head down into the center of your rib cage, or maybe even lower, the center of your body, the solar plexus behind the navel. Wherever you feel most comfortable in your body, allow your awareness to rest in that area. As you feel yourself supported by the furniture upon which you sit, just as that furniture is supported by the floor. And knowing that, you begin to create and sense a letting go feeling in your body. An awareness that you work too hard. There's too much resistance, too much struggle, too much of a sense that we're victims of a life done to us. And we challenge those beliefs when we begin to relax and see that we remain. We acknowledge the fact that we're safe, that everything's okay. It's a feeling, it's a level of awareness that you can easily bring forward. Imagine how it feels when you're kind to someone, maybe unexpectedly kind to somebody who's not being kind to you, but you respond to their anxiety and their frustration with a kindness. How's that feel? And allow that warmth to move through your body. Just releasing your need to control, the stimulus, the world around you and what's done to you. And by letting go, fall back to the elegance of choosing how you look at it and how you respond. That's where we find control. And it's not a struggle to choose your outlook or how you speak and behave. You can initiate that, having carefully considered it. The struggle, the tension, the stress, the anxiety, that's only a product of trying to control the stimulus. What seems to be happening to you. And since it's already happened, I don't know how we could control it anyway, other than attempt to ensure that it doesn't happen again. But you know, a matador doesn't really take the bull by the horns. What bad advice to take the bull by the horns. Allow yourself to let go even further, feeling even more safe and relaxed. And feel the elegance of the matador who steps aside as this bull, this threat, this danger thunders by you. But in your grace, you just simply stepped out of the way. We can live our life not like the Western man who squares off and exchange attacks, but more like the martial artist who pulls the aggressive opponent toward them in the direction they're already moving. And with the slightest effort, puts the opposition on their face. The secret is not to oppose, not to resist, but to let go. You're not fragile. You're a spiritual being. You are eternal, don't you see? Nothing will destroy you. We could be reckless, of course, careless. We could find extremes to argue the point. But today's whole class is about avoiding the extremes and walking that middle way, straight and narrow. The middle way is a way of balance, of emotional equanimity, to be even-tempered. So as to be well-reasoned. And embrace everything from the center. It's a broad center, like a football field or a soccer pitch. The goals, the end zones, the extremes are far apart and out of bounds. The center is not just the 50-yard line, but the whole playing field. The full swing of the pendulum, 80-20, 55-45, 30-70, 90-10, 50-50. It's all the middle. It's a dance. Feel as you relax the elegance and the grace of being that aware, that vigilant, and that responsive. Take a nice, slow, deep breath, pulling in strength and power as you inhale. As you exhale, feel a further letting go in your body from head to toe. Breathe all the way out. Breathe normally. Bring your awareness to the bottom of your nose, the tip of your nose, or just inside the rim of your nostrils. You find your place. And gently fix your attention in that pinpoint where attention rests for the next few minutes. And watch your body breathing itself, all by itself. This is an in-breath. This is an out-breath. It's as simple as that. Be curious. Allow yourself to be fascinated as you identify as the watcher rather than the breather. Let go of all responsibility for breathing. Step back and simply watch your body breathe. Do this for 3 minutes in silence until you hear my voice again. 3 minutes. Watch your breath. And if you can do that for 3 minutes, you can do it for 12 to 15 minutes. For what purpose? Well, as we learn to discern how it feels to watch the body breathing itself, and to let go of our attachment to having to manage even breath, we can watch our thoughts without being the thinker. We can appreciate the ability to think purposefully and deliberately, so-called task-related thinking, to read, to write, to make a list, to solve a problem or make a decision. But when our thoughts are task unrelated, and they bubble up from the unconscious, and they become increasingly negative, and you believe that those are your thoughts, and you embrace that negativity and believe it's valid because you thought it, you've stopped being the observer and falsely identified with unconscious thoughts. The idea is to become more conscious. Conscious of what you're aware of what you're not conscious of. Knowing what it is that you know, but wisdom includes an understanding of how much we do not know, especially about ourselves. It's a great world to discover out there. And it's beautiful and it's fascinating. But nothing is more beautiful than the inner landscape of what you care about, of heartfelt feelings, of the warmth of kindness and generosity, patience and tolerance and compassion, and humor, and humor, and beauty, and that you care. Consider that you care, that you do care, that you love, that it matters. That you can't shake that. Though people can upset us, and sometimes we become angry, and frustrated, and perhaps even lash out with regrettable speech or behavior that we decide later was inappropriate. But at the end of the day, when you breathe and relax and give yourself permission to open your mind and open your heart, there you are, peaceful, loving, kind. Truth is always in there. You don't have to attain it. It's not a destination. Just let go of everything that is not peace and love and understanding. Think about that. Let go of everything that is not peace, love, and understanding. And there it is. feelings, more truly a level of awareness that you can easily and effortlessly bring with you back into the room. As you count yourself out 1 to 3, 3 in a moment will be eyes open, wide awake, with a full memory, deep understanding. But begin with 1, forming the intention to come back to wide awake. 2, a kind of gentle drifting upward, like a helium party balloon floating slowly up into the sky and drifting. And 3, eyes open, back in the room, wide awake, back in the room, feeling fine. Big breath, big breath. Maybe a stretch, like you're waking up. You can always take another big breath if you want. Welcome yourself back to the wide awake state. Feeling fine, better than before. Good. When I think about the number 3, one of the first things that occurs to me is the stability of the triangle. It's quite remarkable. And there is folk wisdom from around the world, from every continent. This ancient folk wisdom about the triangle, the number 3, and often the 3-legged stool. Sometimes we hear about the African 3-legged stool. It's so ancient, the concept that a 3-legged stool never rocks. That's why a camera tripod has 3 legs. Why not 4? Well, because they would all need to be exactly the same length or it would teeter. The beauty of 3 is that every leg could be a different length and it's still perfectly stable. Whether it's a camera tripod, a stool, a table. What a magical number. Now, if a chair or table had 2 legs, it wouldn't be very stable, right? Totally. It might be stable in one plane, but in the other plane, 2 is not enough. One leg is certainly not stable. Though a monopod, you could stable a camera a little bit with a monopod, but not like a tripod. You can't walk away from a monopod. Your camera will fall over. And if you have 4 or more legs on the stool or the table, again, each has to be exactly the same length. Adding more legs, 6 legs, 8 legs, 10 legs on the stool or table, that doesn't help. It's still going to teeter unless every one of those legs is exactly the same length. So less than 3 is no good. More than 3 doesn't help, but 3 rock solid. Well, I bet Pythagoras had that in mind when he started musing about the mathematics of the triangle. And of course, we remember the Pythagorean theorem from school about the right triangle. If and when, maybe I should say when, one of those inside angles on the triangle is 90 degrees, you have a right triangle. And this miraculous formula of squaring one side and adding it to the square of the other side equals the square of the hypotenuse, the long side that connects the two. The hypotenuse is the line opposite the right angle. That's c squared. How does that happen, that a squared plus b squared equals c squared? that if we know the length of two of the legs, any two, we can figure out the third. And there's countless formulas that work that way. Time and distance, like miles per hour. All these formulas that have three elements. And if you know two, you can get the third. Three is just an incredibly stable number. And then along comes Bucky Fuller and the geodesic dome, and he talks about the whole being greater than the sum of the parts. Wow, what does that mean? How could the whole be greater than the sum of the parts? He called it synergy, or the strength of a geodesic dome, for example, is far stronger than you would expect if you just added up the strength of the various components. How can it be? How could the total be greater than all the parts added together? There's an extra element. There's some kind of magical. I'm sure we could find somebody better at math and maybe better at philosophy than me who could explain this to you. I think it's enough just to wonder at it and to recognize that three is pretty special. The three-act play. There are plays with 2 acts and some with 4, but the three-act play, there's a nice rhythm in that. We talk about all events as having a beginning and a middle and an end. Jokes usually come in 3. The farmer had 3 daughters, or these 3 guys walk into a bar, a priest, a rabbi, and a minister. The jokes are always set up. Here's the premise, here's the repetition, and then ba-dum-bump. The third is the punchline, right? Ba-doom, ba-doom, ba-doom. If you're a writer, you might notice the tendency that you have to write in 3s. This is true because of this and this and this. And it just feels complete. It's like music. There's certain chords in music that sound like the music is done. And then other chords that have suspended notes in them that don't resolve and they just don't sound done. There's something really complete about them, something whole about the number 3. And if we go to our initial classes back in February and March, we spent a significant amount of time in the first several classes of this Wisdom of the Soul meeting talking about the Divine Trinity and how it was rooted in paganism, father, child, mother, and also ancient Egyptian Hermetic philosophy with Osiris, Horus, and Isis, the king, the prince, and the queen. There are many fundamentalist Christians that reject the Trinity, the Christian Trinity of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, which again is Father, Son, Mother, because it's pagan, because women are part of it. That's the patriarch of the church had to make sure women were not in the Trinity. In fact, they turned Mary Magdalene into a prostitute for about 800 years. Catholic Church only backed off that in the 1960s. But she was declared to be a prostitute because she was, in fact, one of Jesus' favorite disciples. She seemed to understand what he was saying more than anybody else. And the Gnostic Gospels, or the Nag Hammadi Gospels, the Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in 1947 near Nag Hammadi, they include a book of Mary, and a book of Philip, and a book of Thomas, that the fundamentalists don't want to look at because they offer a Gnostic view, a very different view of Christianity, that basically the Christ is in every one of us, each and every one of us. We'll talk more about the Dead Sea Scrolls at some point in the future. But that's why it's Father, Son, Holy Spirit, rather than Father, Son, Mother, or King, Prince, Queen. But what that really represents is spirit, consciousness, and matter. You see, the center of that Trinity comes third, but stands as number 2. Number 3 is the middle element. Whether we're talking about the Christ between Father Spirit and Mother Matter, Mother Earth, or the consciousness between Spirit and Matter, or on a lower correspondence, the emotional nature between mind and body. That's number 3. The middle is number 3. Early in class, again, going back a few months, we had a riddle that we offered you. What comes third stands as number 2 and makes the 3 into a 1. And that's part of the magic of number 3. While it comes third, it stands in between the binary, in between the two, spirit and matter, God and man, father and mother. So it comes third, but stands as number 2, and it makes the 3 into a 1. In other words, it's that third element that stands in the middle that makes dualism unitary in nature. It's love, the magnetic, attractive nature of love as consciousness or awareness, that allows the one spirit to manifest as multiplicity, all these apparently separated forms of matter, without being diminished or even affected, for that matter. So how do we deal with that paradox of the one and the many? If we're all one, and yet clearly we've got fingerprint evidence and DNA proof that we're all unique, not just diverse, but as unique as snowflakes, even grains of sand. The universe refuses to replicate itself. How could both things be true? Only with a middle element, only with the magnetic nature of love that allows unity, the oneness of divinity, the creative force, the cause, to manifest as an effect all these different unique forms without being diminished, without losing its oneness. It takes a third element in the middle. Comes 3, stands as number 2, and makes the 3 a 1. It is an enigma. It is a paradox. Let it be a paradox. All right. We're all made. If you find that a little too airy-fairy and you want to stick with empirical physical stuff, okay, we're all made from the same star. Every element in the periodic table, except for hydrogen and helium, 1 electron, 2 electrons, everything else is made inside a star. All the metals, all the noble gases, every element is manufactured in a star, and then that star peters out, it's supernovas, and all the elements of the periodic table go out into the world and become asteroids and meteors and comets and interstellar gases, and sometimes they come together as planets. And sometimes a planet like Earth gets hit by another big rock, and a big piece goes off. And because of the nature of gravity, all those pieces come together, and we find that we have a moon. Imagine our surprise in the 60s when we went to the moon and found, by sampling the rocks and bringing them home, they were of the Earth. The moon at one point was the earth. And so each of us is of that. We eat food that's of the clay of the earth, right? And we're all made out of the same stuff. And yet, some of this stuff is animated, some of it's alive, some of it's conscious, some of it's sentient. You are, I am. So are the trees and the flowers. They respond to their environment. They're alive. They're aware. They're not as aware of the flowers and the trees and the grasses as the animal kingdom, but the animal kingdom is not as aware as the human kingdom. And not only are some humans more or less aware than others, but each one of us on any given day is more or less aware. Who doesn't know the feeling of being caught off guard because we just were not aware of what was going on? Sitting at a traffic light after it turned green is the example that I always think of. And somebody's got to go, hey, Benner, wake up. Where are you? Well, I wasn't taking a nap, though I've been known to do that. I was just someplace else. I just went away. I was not aware. Again, wisdom begins with becoming aware of all that we are not aware of. So the number 3, powerful. The middle way in Eastern philosophy, and particularly in Buddhism, is similar, as I said in my newsletter this week, to the straight and narrow. We're going to get him back on the straight and narrow. This juvenile delinquent, this child, this bad actor, we're going to reform this prisoner and get him back on the straight and narrow. What does that mean? Well, it's a biblical reference, actually. It comes out of Matthew, where I think the phrase is, the gate is straight and the way is narrow to the kingdom of heaven. In other words, you got to be good. And you don't have to be perfect, but you got to form the intention to pursue virtue. This is especially important in Eastern philosophy. In Judeo-Christianity, there's always debate about works and whether works or faith are sufficient to redeem your soul and ensure life everlasting. So we'll allow that debate to go on. But in the East, the idea of embodying virtue is very, very important. To do the best you can, to walk the straight and narrow, to be good, to be honest, to practice loving kindness, to be compassionate, empathetic, to be merciful, to be generous and tolerant, and kind and forgiving. These are virtues. These are ethics. This is morality. One of the things that we find so distressing in that which presents itself is politics, is how unethical and corrupt and indecent it is, without regard to partisanship, just across the board. We have an economy based on gambling and a government based on bribery. Oh, you can call them campaign donations, but you can get a law passed for $5,000 or $10,000. Not that hard. It's easy to get cynical about the level of corruption. But better to spend your time just on modeling virtue to the best of your ability, because it's difficult. There are so many temptations to just throw in the towel. One of the curious things about people who lie is they rationalize it by telling themselves repeatedly, everybody lies. So I would be a fool not to lie. And cheaters tell themselves, everybody cheats. I'm going to fall behind if I don't cheat. And thieves say, well, everybody steals stuff. I've got to steal, lie, and cheat. Everybody else is stealing and lying and cheating. I better get mine as long as I don't get caught. Right? Well, it's not true that everybody lies and cheats and steals. We've talked a lot about and will continue to emphasize the importance of intention. Our class last week about karma danced all around intention. Karma is not merely action, behavior, speech. It's in the way you feel, it's in the way you think, but primarily, karma is generated by our intention. And so it's noble to form the intention to be a virtuous person. And then cut yourself some slack. If you're going to forgive others, you've got to be able to forgive yourself if you screw up. Did you do it intentionally? No, I didn't really appreciate what I was getting myself into. Okay, well, learn from it and then do it differently next time, or don't do that again. Intention. So much forgiveness that becomes available of others and yourself when you understand the fundamental nature of intention beneath our thoughts and our feelings and the way we speak and behave. And of course, the only thing behind intention then is awareness, consciousness. The one thing so fundamental that you just can't get behind awareness. So be aware of intending to embody virtue. Okay? That's the straight and narrow. We also have the razor's edge in literature. Somerset Maugham, I believe, wrote a book 80 years ago or something called The Razor's Edge. There's reference to it in Apocalypse Now with the Coppola movie, with Marlon Brando and Martin Sheen. Walking the razor's edge. What is that razor's edge? That's the straight and narrow. That's the middle way. Now, the thing about the middle way is the razor's edge is a good allegory. Straight and narrow is a good allegory to a point. But the thing about the middle way, balance, to be centered, equanimity in our lives, the way it plays out is that it's not straight. It meanders. It's a serpentine path. Often it's a spiralic path, but it's dynamic and ever-changing. You've noticed, I'm sure. I'm sure. Today will not be like yesterday, except in some broad general ways, but specifically, this will be a very different day. Surely you remember as little kids, we would lay in the grass. Imagine having the time to do that and watch the clouds. That was sufficient to entertain us. To lay in the grass and watch the clouds, and they would always move. And we would see faces, we would project faces into those clouds and shapes and even share with each other. Oh, it looks like a horse running. A horse? No, that looks like a pig to me. And you're both wrong. It's a cloud. We do that same projection, of course, in our waking lives when we look at other people and project upon them your particular concerns, your point of view. Projection is a big issue. We'll, again, an idea we'll return to. But I want you to understand that while these allegories of being honest and a good person, walking the straight and narrow, or following the delicate balance of the razor's edge, when we open it up to a philosophy like the third way, the path will wander a bit. It'll meander, but you need to remain on the path. and not get off the trail, getting off the well-worn path can be disastrous. I have a story in my book, Fearless Intelligence, about me getting off the trail because of the impending darkness. And I was far from a campsite, and I thought I had to backtrack, and I knew a shortcut, but it took me off the trail, and you'll have to read the book to to find out what happens. But initially, it's not good, because I got off the trail. I allowed fear to get the better of me. So oddly, it's fear that often pulls us out of the middle way, off the balanced and centered path of goodness and truth and beauty. But even though it's fear that drags us off in one direction or another, fear wins the day and is then compounded. And remember, fear, stress, anxiety, whatever we call it, it shatters awareness. It just destroys consciousness. We get stupid. We make mistakes. Oh, I didn't see that. How could I have missed that? Why didn't I think of that? Because you were stressed. And to deal with stress and anxiety and fear, the part of the brain called the amygdala shuts down the executive functions of the higher brain, of the frontal lobes and the neocortex that connects it all. It's called the amygdala hijack. It literally shuts down creativity and imagination and higher intelligence and leaves you with this binary either or, all or nothing, right or wrong, winners or losers, fight or run like hell. And you know you're dealing with an anxious, stressed, frightened person when they argue or just simply chat with you from an either or place, an all or nothing place. Well, what are you going to do? You either got to do this or not. You got to do it their way. It's my way or the highway. There's only two ways anything can be. And all differences are opposites. There's a crazy one. We could agree on 99% of what's happening in the world. But that 1% comes up and you'd think we were bitter enemies. You see it in relationships with people. People in general, I'd like to think this is not you, I'm not accusing any individuals here, but I think people in general say the meanest, most hurtful things to the people they love the most, and never consider why that is so. When you do that, when you're seduced by binary thinking, if seduced is the right word, when you're forced into it by fear, stress, and anxiety, you lose the rainbows in between, or some would say the shades of gray between all or nothing, between the black and white world in which most people live. There's rainbows, not just shades of gray. There's rainbows. There's not only a third way, but if there's a third way of looking at things, permutation, combination, variation, then there must be a fourth way. And perhaps there's a fifth option. And maybe there's a sixth way of looking at things, or a seventh, or an eighth, or a ninth, or maybe we can put the third way and the eighth way together and get a 15th way. You know what I'm saying? I teach in my private sessions, and I might as well share it with you guys, though I won't dwell on it today, what I call the choices chant. It's 4 elements. It begins with, I have choices. That's huge right there. Just to have that little tool in your back pocket or your purse. I have choices. Anytime you feel you don't have choices and you're locked in this everything or nothing mode of thinking, like most people, where most people live, Just say to yourself, wait a minute, I have choices. Even in school, some exams were true and false, but most were multiple choice. At least you had a C and a D and an all of the above and a none of the above. And then if your teacher was really bright, it was not just a right answer. It had to be the best right answer. And two or more of the multiple choices were right answers, but they weren't as good as the one right answer. And then we leave school and live in a true or false world, everything or nothing, black or white, men or women, Republicans and Democrats, liberals or conservatives, communists and fascists. There's only two ways anything can be. Not true. So the middle way is a way of avoiding extremes, of standing balanced and centered, embracing all possibility. It is the path to wholeness, don't you see? The middle way is the path to oneness. Christ said, I am the way and the light. Follow me. What does that mean? Follow your heart. Christ represents love in that Trinity. Father aspect, in case you were curious about the relationship between Christ and the Father aspect, the Father represents divine will, the Son represents divine love, and the Mother is the body. She is receptive to the impress of divine will, the creative force. Actually, the creative force is the love. The divine will is the energy, the ideation, divine will, the plan. Some people call it a plan. Divinity knows what it's doing. There is a plan. There's an order. There's rules. There's laws. The middle way is one of them. Karma is another law. Gravity is a law. So the Father aspect is divine will, the Son is divine love, the Mother is intelligent activity, the physical receptive nature of matter to spirit and consciousness. Spirit's sort of like the raw material. Consciousness, the love aspect, awareness is the way we mold that raw energy into the outcomes that we experience in our lives, whether it's healing or solving a problem or the so-called law of attraction. Your life is a reflection of your intentions and your attitudes and your belief systems. Wasn't that many weeks ago that we spent quite a bit of time on the whole idea that all happiness and all suffering exists in the mind? Part of enlightenment and becoming more conscious as you move in that direction is recognizing that life is not done to you. It flows through you, and the world reflects your awareness, your consciousness, as well as the consciousness, the awareness, the beliefs and attitudes of other people. Obviously, none of us is an island. We're in the mix. We're in the blend of everybody's beliefs and expectations as well. But life mirrors us. So to change your life, you change yourself. Right? That's just an introduction to what is meant by the middle way. And again, in emotions, because emotional intelligence is so critical to personal and transpersonal or spiritual development, this idea of emotional equanimity, to be balanced and centered in your emotions, to be calm and relaxed, aware of how you feel. You don't deny your feelings. You don't ignore your feelings. You don't repress your feelings. You want to be more aware of them so they're easier to manage. Imagine if you saw your anger coming a mile away while it was just a little guy on the horizon. And you look at yourself and you say, you know, I'm starting to get really upset about this. This is starting to really piss me off. And if I don't do something differently here, if I don't remind myself that I have choices, and I didn't tell you what the other three were, but number two is there are always more choices that are immediately apparent. Three is our choices are in our perception and response, not controlling the stimulus. And four, I choose my outlook and my response for the greater good of all concerned. So you remind yourself that I have choices. I have lots of choices. I have choices I haven't even considered yet. And if I don't begin to explore those, this anger is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And pretty soon it's going to be all over me. It's going to devour me, and it's going to run the show. And then I'm going to say something or do something really stupid. Because all hurtful feelings are rooted in anxiety, stress, and fear, and that shatters awareness. You can't tell me that you have brilliant creative insight when you're angry. It doesn't happen. We get stupid as hell. Completely dumb. Saying things you almost immediately regret. Oh my God, what was I thinking? Well, you weren't. The amygdala thought you were in danger, shut down your higher brain function so you couldn't think, and put you in this either-or place. It stripped away the third way, the middle way. The whole idea of being balanced and centered as a path to wholeness, don't you see? That's what the middle way is. It's not just a third way. It's what unifies the either-orness of things, the dualism, and takes us to a non-dual reality. I want to talk more about non-duality in the future. The Buddhist concept is called emptiness, but it's a real confusing term. So we'll approach in time the idea of emptiness, probably using more often than emptiness, non-duality, or wholeness. I mean, what does the word holy mean? What does it mean to be holy? It means the whole kit and caboodle, to be whole, with a silent W perhaps, but holistic, right? Complete. Either or is not complete. It's a tug of war. It leads to conflict and violence and war and animosity and hatred and murder and theft and either or thinker does not embody virtue. They have a very difficult time embodying virtue, being ethical or moral, because they're so terrified. You have to know peace to be happy. That's the middle way. That's Christ saying, I am the way. The middle of what? Spirit and matter. Father and Holy Spirit, Father and Mother. The Son, the offspring of energy and mass. Was consciousness, love, harmony. The harmony between unity and diversity. There's another nice trinity. Unity, harmony, diversity. You know, if everybody sang lyrics to a song that we all knew in any key we wanted, singing any note, that would be diversity. And we'd be singing and maybe having fun, but wouldn't sound very good. Unity, if we're singing all the same note, that's nice. That's sort of like the children's choir. Everybody sings the next note. But look at the beauty in harmony. Harmony is both. We're going to sing different notes, but we're going to be unified in our approach. It's not really a third way, is it? It's a union of unity and diversity. So in a unified sense, we're going to coordinate and organize our singing of certain notes. The first, the third, the fifth, the suspended seventh, or the flatted fifth. Not to get into deep music theory, but you know what harmony sounds like. The Beach Boys, right? The Four Tops, the Temptations, Earth, Wind, and Fire, a barbershop quartet. Oh, spare me. The Four Tops, the Lennon Sisters. It's a beautiful thing, harmony. It's really beautiful. That's the middle way. Okay, so it's about 6 minutes after noon here in California. Uh, let's go to the questions. Mindy, do we have anybody yet in the chat box who has a comment or a question?
I think we're all mesmerized.
Yeah. Well, don't be mesmerized.
Well, maybe you could lead us into the whole idea of accepting my challenging dark emotions with my happy ones. I mean, I think that's the middle way, is not trying to cut that off. I had this experience 2 weeks ago where I had a lot of hard things parade by. And then in the meditation last week in your class, all the facts went away, and just the feelings, the raw, painful feelings were left. And it was it revealed things to me that I guess I had waited years. I'm sure I'm not done, but I guess the idea of uh, that middle way can't cut off the hard parts, and that's what you're alluding to. Is I think the harmony was a great metaphor, that it's both of these. We need both sides to come in the middle, and that's still challenging for me to, for instance, want to disagree with someone or want to change their mind. I love that. Let's change this person's way of thinking. And
Right.
hard to embrace. I think Bathsheba Singer used to talk about a bouquet of flowers and some of the weeds in there, and that we needed them all to have that bouquet.
A garden does need weeds.
And just stinky flowers, and because some of them pollinate some. But
Yeah.
I guess it's hard to not want to push that away. If you have any advice on that.
Yeah, sure. If everything that hurts emotionally represents something we don't understand, and everything that feels joyous and wonderful is an indication of what we do understand, then what better approach to resolving the hurt and the heartache but by addressing it with your love and openness and the security and safety of knowing what you do know, and carrying that light into the darkness, confronting what you don't know, bringing it all to, it's sort of like a mediator. What does a mediator do? Like in a landlord-tenant dispute, for example, or in couples counseling, what do we do? I'll tell you, as somebody who's counseled, I don't know, I almost said thousands, but that couldn't possibly be true. Maybe 100 or more couples. What the couples want is for the counselor to adjudicate. They want Judge Wapner or Judge Judy.
They want to be right too.
Yeah. And I brought my lame partner with me so you could fix them.
Yeah.
Like, it's really important to know who asked for the session, because that's who wants to fix the other.
Sure.
Of course, the other, once they get in there, they want their turn to point the finger at their other, right? But the goal is to find out who's right by making the other one wrong. That's the way we argue.
Mhm.
And if you disagree, and I obviously know I'm right, then you disagree, you must be wrong. It's just, what's the alternative? To grant you some correctness and then make me wrong? That's not going to happen. So, what does a mediator do, even though their clients are demanding adjudication? What a decent counselor will do is find points where they do agree. They will use harmony. Well, and same thing, a labor dispute or a landlord-tenant dispute. Um, what can we agree on? This railroad strike we just avoided. Mediators come in, the government comes in and say, you know, they don't begin with what are our conflicts, what are our differences. It's like, what do we agree on? That's where you begin. Where can we agree? And you build from there. And often the emotional needs get met through that process such that when you finally get to the parts where you do disagree, they're seen in a context of they're just not all that important. Because I just spent this time reviewing all these areas that we do agree. And are you really gonna fight this battle to claim that hill and plant your flag on this petty dispute when you're all on the same side? You need to remind yourself you're on the same side. That never happens by one person winning an argument. You've got to both win. The classic, it's sort of trite phrase, the win-win solution. Well, that's third way. That's middle way thinking based on a balanced view and then a tolerance of the richness of, not only should we tolerate diversity in people who disagree with us, including our own conflicts and internal frustrations, we should celebrate them as a richness rather than be threatened by. Again, you see that every day in life where people are threatened by what they don't understand, and they believe strongly that there's somebody here who is other than, who's not me because they speak a different language, or they appear to pray to a different god, or they dance funny and they eat strange food, and their skin color may even be different, or their hair, or something absurd. Their values are different. The songs they sing are different. Oh my God, that different must be a threat. No, different is wonderful. Different. What was that? I used that allegory of Baskin Robbins a couple of weeks ago. Why would you always order vanilla? Every time you go to Baskin Robbins, you get vanilla. It's ridiculous. Um, and then besides Baskin Robbins, there's yogurt, and you can make your own frozen yogurt, and there's all kinds. There's sherbets and sorbets and all kinds of other wonderful treats. I mean, live it up. Life is rich. Life is wonderful. Try things you've never tried before. You think you hate this kind of ethnic food, Thai food, Chinese food, Mexican food, Greek food. Try it, you know? And maybe you decide, no, I don't really care for that. But you don't have to say, oh, I hate that. Oh, that's horrible. Oh, those people are stupid. Just chill out, relax, come back to the middle, I don't really care for that, but I can understand how people would like it. You know, kimchi. Have you ever had kimchi, Mindy?
I have not.
That's an acquired taste.
I think it is. I've heard.
Yeah,
I've heard it is, and I've heard that everybody makes it a little differently too.
it's like sauerkraut with a kick. It's really good for you, though. So, yeah, we have to embrace to stand in the center between positive feelings and negative feelings. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, embrace it all. bring them together such that the positive feelings, what we do understand about ourselves, illumines the negative. You see, you bring your light into the darkness. You be the light that reveals your path as you go deeper and deeper and deeper into whatever scares the bejesus out of you. This is the hero's way. This is the hero's journey. This is the straight and narrow path. But it's balanced and it's centered, and we refuse to be tempted by extremes. This is Plato's moderation in everything, by the way. Same thing, the Greek mean of Plato said not only moderation in everything, but even be moderate in your moderation.
Mhm.
Don't overdo moderation. Don't be so rigid. You know, ease up, be flexible, dance with it, flow with it. See?
Well, I think the challenge for me comes in partly trying to take that concept and not being pushed away by people whose feelings scare me, whose those interpersonal interactions that I think this is the same, this really the same skill brought to bear of not running into my corner and not being scared off by something that seems the other side. I know it's kind of hard to put into words, but it just seems paradoxical that the more we do the meditation and the breathing and try to think of nothing and do nothing, for me anyway, the more clarity has come in how to
Yes.
handle difficult choices in difficult emotional situations. The middle way seems clearer through the practice, which instead of trying to map it out, think it out, sometimes that's pretty tough. But I've been amazed, and maybe I want to hear what other people have to say too. What has come to you in just this sitting practice? Because I've been doing it lately, and I've been feeling anxious and can't sleep. I do the breathing, and things come to me, and then I usually fall asleep, but that's good too. I just wondered if whatever you want to talk about, Michael, but the the gifts that have come to me through this simple practice and through listening to what you have to say. It's been great.
Well, thank you. Um, there's a lot to be said about that phrase, getting out of our own way. There was a book called Bagger Vance, and they made it into a movie with Will Smith and was it Matt Damon? Or uh, I'm not sure. Maybe it was Leo. But it's called Bagger Vance, and Will Smith is the caddy who is sort of the trainer, consultant, uh, coach of this washed up pro golfer who wants to make a comeback. And he's teaching him basically to stop thinking and to allow the inner golfer in him to rise up and effortlessly improve his swing and his accuracy and shave points off his game by letting go, getting out of his own way, not trying so hard. And it's a very Zen story. And also is the essence of sports psychology, but any performance in accelerated learning, we see the same thing, the importance of understanding, of promoting understanding through relaxation, because again, stress, tension, fear, apprehension, worry, doubt, nervousness, panic, whatever term, it shatters intelligence. It just destroys awareness and creativity and imagination and locks us into these conflicts. Either or is an inherent conflict. And God, imagine living your whole life there, struggling. Everything's a struggle. Um, This is what psychology, philosophy, religion, uh, the social sciences, the humanities, to a large extent, all of it is fueled by a desire to avoid the suffering that comes out of this conflict, this binary, this part of the brain that's devoted to the subject-object split. That's what it comes down to, is a belief that we're the subject, everything else is an object, and we're separated by verbs. And the objects act on the subject acts on the object, but the verb divides them into this or that. You can't be this and that. And the separation is the problem. And nothing represents that better than dualism and this binary all or nothing thinking. It's been a bugaboo of mine since I started doing talk shows 100 plus, 150 years ago. There's people who would, in the 60s, it was love it or leave it. You had to love America. You had to accept war. You had to accept the illegality and immorality of Vietnam. You had to accept poverty in our own country. You had to accept racism. You had to accept injustice, or at least overlook it, and love the country fully and completely, or you were invited by Mr. Nixon and others of his ilk to go to Russia or China or North Korea or Vietnam or Cuba, because you were a pinko, you were a commie. Only two choices. It's a horrible, horrible way to suffer. And the third way is the way out. We've never had a class without some comment from a participant, and so I don't want to start that precedent. Who would like to comment about anything? Middle way, meditation, question out of right field, comment. Anybody? Should I wait them out, Melinda? Because I can talk. You know I can talk. You know I can go on and on. Anything in the chat box?
Patrick has something to say.
Good. Hello, Patrick. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning, Michael, Melinda. Uh, love the class today. It's great. You know, I'm constantly trying to find that middle way, and just having it explained makes sense to trying to visualize what I'm shooting for. Right? You have the spirit, the earth, and it's that in between where we sit, and that's the only thing we can kind of control. And like that other part of seeing it coming, like being in touch with that something's bothering me, and face it before it's out of control. And the sooner you can reset yourself, or for me, just I know it's going to be less stress in the world, and being able to enjoy it instead of being afraid of it.
Yeah, to face it. That's the quotation from Pema Chodron in my newsletter this week was about the bravery that the middle way requires, because it's facing the conflict and knitting it together. Just occurred to me another variation on this idea of the middle way is the present moment between past and future. Here's another middle. And again, what is more central to meditation or contemplation or reflection than being in the present moment? Because our thought stream, being driven to such a large degree by anxiety, tends to drag us into the fears of the past and the future. the regrets and the resentments from the past. I wish I woulda, I wish I coulda, if I'd known then what I know now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then the fears that we project into the future, that we make up, that we invent. It's like we have this pre-existing anxiety, and now we're going to go exploring the future purely out of imagination to see if we can figure out a way to justify my right to be terrified. Oh my God, the fascists are going to take, oh, the world is going to collapse. It probably will. Species are going extinct like crazy. Just things are changing rapidly. Good changes, bad changes. Yeah, but be careful about the judging of what's good and what's bad. Again, every cloud has a silver lining, and every sunny day could fall apart at any time. I mean, the whole idea of the impermanence of the physical world that we call reality, but it's not reality, it's not true, because it's not permanent. It doesn't last. It's always in flux and it's always changing. So get used to it. Get used to the change. And I recently counseled a business person who was concerned about the slowdown in the economy. And I said, wait a minute, what if your sales, your productivity, your profitability, whatever, your top line, your bottom line, when have they ever been constant? Or the rate of growth linear? And they say, never. I said, so it's always had its ebb and flow, its highs and its lows, right? Yeah. And so if you're in a trough, you're between peaks, right? There was a crest you came out of, and there will be another crest or peak, but right now you're in a trough, you know? Well, accept it. Use this time when business is slow to prepare for the onslaught at hand. And they might say, yeah, well, what if that doesn't happen? What if it just always, something's got to happen. It's got to change. It can't stay the same. And they might say, well, it could get worse. So I said, well, maybe it will get worse, but it's still, at some point, it's got to get better because everything is energy. Everything is spirit. That means everything vibrates. Everything has a yin and a yang. It cycles around and around. It's a law. So if things are really good now, then prepare for the more difficult times around the corner. And if you're in a funk and you're depressed and feeling bummed out, then know things will get better, like the Beatles song. Why does it have to get better? Because it can't get any worse, the Beatles sing. Can't get no worse. Got to admit it's getting better. And be the middle that embraces all of that, the stable, the rudder, don't you see? That keeps you on the straight and narrow, on that balanced path, the emotional equanimity. You can see the word equal in there, right? Equanimity is even-tempered. Don't get pulled off into anger and hostility or into hysteria and silliness. You will, each of us takes our little forays out into those extremes, but come back to the middle. That's where the peace is. That's where the power is. Isn't it strange that the power of love and consciousness comes from peace? Peace is power. Power is peace. Power is not money and dominance. Although you might think so to look at the way the world is run. The billionaires never have enough money. People that are making $50, $60, $70,000 a year or less, $20,000 a year. I don't know how you live on minimum wage. But they get by. They're more content than the billionaire. What is this drive that they have for more money and more power? And using crisis to this so-called inflation is a PR scam. And what these there's only a handful of corporations left, right? What they're doing is raising their prices. You can see their profits if you bother to look are through the friggin' roof. They use that money to pay their executives because they only make 25 or 30 million a year. They need raises and to buy back stock,
Yep.
to own more, to buy other companies and eliminate competition. And then they call it inflation and blame poor old Joe Biden like he like he could do something about it, right? Even the Federal Reserve, which sets interest rates, is not a government agency. It's a private corporation. It's a private bank. The banks own the government. And that's not political. There's nothing political about what I'm saying. It's just the addiction to more money and more power, which is a false god. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Instead, store your riches in heaven and not on earth. The real power we're looking for, the power of love, of consciousness, of wisdom, of truth, of beauty, of humor, of kindness, that power comes out of peace and ease and grace and elegance, and it's not something we need to attain. It's right here in the center, the middle way. See, that's where it is. Just everything's okay. Just stay balanced, stay centered. Surf it. The water will support you and carry you forward, surfer. Your job is to determine your direction and maintain your balance. And that's the middle way. Patrick, I almost forgot that that was responding to a comment of yours. Do you have anything to add to that, Patrick?
I think he's driving.
Oh, maybe I lost Patrick.
He's still here, but he might be tied up.
Okay, I'm going to let you guys go then. It's 12:30, a little bit after 12:30 California time. I said good morning to Patrick.
I am here.
Okay, good.
But I got a lot of background noise with this big truck.
Yeah, look at that big rig.
And so I'm going through some training and I get my truck next week. So if everything goes all right. So I'm doing a little pre-trip to drive down to Nogales.
You're going to Nogales. Well, good. Have a good trip.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for joining us.
Michael, let's give a hat tip to the CEO of Patagonia who donated billions.
Oh, isn't he cool?
And his products are great. Patagonia.
His products are great. I've tried to patronize him when I was a backpacker. He's always been super good to his employees. I was not at all surprised by that announcement this week because that's who he's always been.
Yeah.
And Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and there are other billionaires whose conscience is encouraging them to be even more philanthropic. Peel off a couple of million for your rotten kids if you want. Get them a good education, but let them find their own way. And give them a few bucks if you wish, but Donald Trump's father left him $400 million and he squandered it. He could have lived a life of luxury and loved his children, and instead it's that addiction to power and domination and money and control, and what a miserable. There is no virtue in that. So I feel like we skated over a lot of material today, but it feels whole to me, and that's the whole point. The middle way, the third way, is the path to unifying the appearance of opposites into wholeness. So thank you very much for being here. I'd like you to unmute and say goodbye. And let me say salam and aloha and namaste to each of you. Join us next week. Watch for your newsletter on Saturday, and we'll see where we go. Not too sure just yet what direction we'll head in, because I have many options. But karma, middle way, these are important classes. So stay with us if you can. And again, unmute, say so long, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for being here, everybody.
See you next
Cheers,
week.
everyone.
Thank you, Michael.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, Michael.
You bet. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Shanti, shanti, shanti.